Hi, everybody. It is I, Katie Morton. I'm the editor-in-chief of Search Engine Journal. And today I'm sitting down with Kevin Indig, who is a growth advisor to fast-growing tech companies. And he is the author of Growth Memo, which is a fantastic newsletter we syndicate it here on Search Engine Journal. But sign up for it because he also has content only for subscribers. And it's just really smart learnings, and it's what every marketer needs to know. So anyway, Kevin, thanks for making the time today. And we're here primarily to talk about a data study that Kevin conducted. The results, I believe, that you were pouring through happened back in March and April of 2025, and the study came out in May. Obviously, it's now late June. So some time has gone by, and that has given us some time to distill those results and to really make sense of them. And we want to talk about, I think, the nuts and bolts of the background of that study so people understand what we're talking about. But we want to go beyond the study to then say, how do we help marketers? How do we help, every company that has been, let's say, frustrated by Google or AI overviews or the traffic drops, and how can people rectify that? So the first question I just want to ask you, Kevin, is the study in a nutshell, and the main takeaways. What do you want people to know to give them that background?
Thanks again for having me on, Katie. It's great to be here with you. The study in a nutshell is essentially, it basically came out of the wish of better understanding and deeply understanding from a qualitative perspective how everyday users interact and engage with AI overviews. 2024 was kind of a moment where everybody looked at this and said, this looks kind of funky. Let's keep an eye on this. But the results traffic and stuff wasn't that impacted. And then at the beginning of 2025, everything changed, and it was like a holy cow moment. This is real and this is serious. And so we set out to ask 70 participants for this study out of the US across different age groups to solve 8 tasks that basically cover the most dominant user intents. So it's stuff like find a tax accountant in your area, research this medical question, all sorts of things like e-commerce intent, basically the most dominant things that people are doing on the web. And we intentionally steered them to some queries which were showing AI overviews at the time. But now it's much more, but back then, we're like, okay, half of the questions should have people interact with the AI overviews, but we didn't tell people to necessarily interact with them, right? We didn't want to bias them or prime them before they encountered the AI overview, but we knew that they were going to see one. And so in a nutshell, I think that the 3 most poignant results are that, first of all, and this is no surprise, but clicks are really rare when people see AI overviews. I think that got through to everyone by now. And yet at the same time, classic organic results still have the majority of impact on people's completion of user journeys. Let me untangle that for just a second. What we found is that people get their final answer, which is kind of the final piece of information that they were set out to get. They get that 80% of the time from classic organic results, not from AI overviews. So that was encouraging. 2, clicks are going down, but people still click. And each of those clicks has a much, much higher quality than, say, in 2024 and before, because those clicks are clicks to verify whether the results are accurate, get human inputs from platforms like Reddit or YouTube, and increase the confidence in whether what the AI is saying is true. And so for us, that means it's critical to be present in these high trust, high risk moments. I can unpack that a little more. And then the third result that I found very interesting is that there really is an age difference here. So younger people are much more receptive to AI answers. They're much more active on Reddit and YouTube, whereas people with a higher age, they will often just skip the AI answers because they don't trust them, right? And so takeaway again here is that You want to know who you're talking to, who your target audience is, ideally like what the age group is of your ICP or your target audience, and then make SEO decisions accordingly.
Right on. So thank you for that. And what I would love to talk about is the idea of branding. If someone, I think that this, well, I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like big brands are a little safer with the developments of late, because if you already have recognition and then you're not starting from that, you're really behind the eight ball. If you're a tiny brand, if you don't have any recognition, and for the uninitiated, uninformed, why is that important? It's the idea that when you're talking about high trust, if someone sees your brand in an AIO, they're more likely to, recognize that brand clout. And if they are going to click in the AIO, they're more likely to click on your site. And also, if someone is going to scroll to get to the, the 10 blue links or the organic results, 10 blue links, that's not a thing anymore. But if they're going to scroll down beyond the AIO and they're going to look at the real results, they're probably, and then they're looking for that human verification, that, they're looking for the trust, they're going to go with someone they recognize. So for a brand that's not, well, and let me back up again, you can be a great brand and then actually lose recognition and you can lose brand trust. And I was talking to Morty Oberstein, who he's head of Unify Branding now. He's doing his own thing with helping people with branding. And he and I sit down on a regular basis to have some conversations about branding. And it's really important for companies, obviously. I mean, reputation seems to be everything right now. So if you're so an example he gave of a big brand who lost clout was Nike. Nike was so ubiquitous. And I think that they had this sense of misplaced confidence in themselves, and they didn't realize that they could ever lose that throne. And I feel the younger generations, they're like, Nike who, right? Like and even amongst the older folks, like when I see people out and around, I rarely see the swoosh anymore. I see Hokas, which are these like big ugly things, but no, the Hoka rollers, I've heard they're fantastically comfortable. Anyway, I'm touching on a lot of points here, and I'm going to dial it in. But so for a big brand to keep that confidence, and or a brand that is maybe known amongst the older set and not the younger set, how did they gain that trust? And for a brand who just never had it to begin with, let's say they're just tiny or they're just starting out or they've always struggled with that recognition, what do they do? Is the door shut, or can they get traction these days?
You can get traction. You can turn the ship around, and it's really challenging. And part of the challenge is, this goes directly back to SEO. Part of the challenge is that so many different teams and departments need to work together. The product and R&D team or innovations team, they obviously need to, I think Nike is a great example, right? They were lapsed by On and by Hoka, who were just more innovative, right? And then the marketing department needs to communicate that to people in an enticing way. Customer support or success needs to probably good experience, right? Like the supply chain needs that product. There's a lot going into this. And the challenge, and this goes directly back of one of the big challenges of our time. The challenge for SEO is you don't control all of these where, right? The reality is that SEO was always in that bucket where they couldn't control all the variables. I mean, if you think about it, the main output of SEO, or SEOs as people better said, is recommendations. So you always were relying on other teams. And that has 10x now with AI, because, as you said, brand and brand perception and sentiment is so critical to how you appear in search results or answers. And it goes back to so many different touch points with a brand, not just the logo that people see or the advertising, but also the product that they use, retention, all that kind of stuff. And so I think the SEOs need to find ways to make other teams aware of shortcomings that are visible through SEO. For example, click-through rates, brand search volume, engagement metrics on the website. These can all be indicators for that. And so SEOs need to take that and tell the story and get other teams, to kind of step it up. And the big challenge there is that you often hit a cost calculation, right? So if you go over to head of customer support and you say, look, we need better support, you obviously need to define that very clearly, right? But it's just say, like, let's just say we need to hire another call center with people who can take more time answering customers' questions, right? That is a big cost center. That is not, you can't just go and say, well, we need more, searches and that's why we need to invest millions in a call center. They're going to ask back, okay, how much more are we getting for that? And quantifying that is incredibly challenging, right? So you absolutely hit it on the head with some of the challenges that reflect in SEO. And at the same time, it's not enough for us SEOs to only think about, maybe we can talk to the pay team about some stuff, right? It's like, this goes way beyond just Google as a channel. This goes basically towards back to the company strategy. And it's incredibly difficult to influence.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is. Well, and talking about like the nuts and bolts of SEO, and every so many years we get the hand waving, SEO is dead, SEO is dead. I mean, this is really the first time that I've seen it. I'd say I've been in SEO for 20 years. I hate dating myself like that, but I've been doing it for, let's just say, a long time. This is the first time that I felt like there's sort of like this credible threat. I mean, it'll never be dead. Let's be realistic, because it's called discovery, and people are always going to need to be discovered, wherever that is. And so, we just get that out of the way. But what you're saying, is like it is, SEO is used to be looked at as sort of almost like, and it's not free, right? Because you got to pay your SEO specialist and you got to pay to create organic content. But it was always looked at as the most cost-effective way, close to as free as you can get, to do marketing. And now it's become, it's not a sure thing like it used to be. And so then it starts to, the idea of the budget behind SEO starts to look questionable in terms of the ROI. And so I think that, in my opinion, it's going to be contracting a bit as an industry. Like all industries, they tend to contract and expand over the years. And I think that we're in somewhat of a contraction state, but it's also going to shift in terms of how people do things. And in some ways, it's been good in terms of clearing out the deadwood of both low quality, I would like to think, low quality content that was just like these super general search terms. The only point was to bring in massive page views and clicks. And now AIO is sort of like, all right, well, if it's general knowledge, like, for example, what is, well, back in the day, EAT, now it's EEAT. But if you put in a search for, what is EAT, the word eat obviously is a very common word in the English language. And so you would get massive numbers of searches on this, and it would depend on obviously the intent of the user, whether maybe they were, English as a second language, or they're trying to learn and they're like, what is eat that you speak of, right? Versus what is EAT, which, the expertise, authority, trust. So anyway, we were ranking for that. I don't know where we are right now, whatever, but we used to get like a massive amount of traffic for that. Obviously, a lot of it unqualified, right? Because like if someone's in SEO and they're like looking for what is EAT, it's like we try to appeal to a more learned audience, and so those might not have been like, they're not highly qualified clicks for us. And so with this shift in the industry, what we're observing for us, and I think for a lot of other people in the industry, is that traffic is now, it's down, but it's so much more powerful because it's so much more highly qualified. Obviously, it's rough on publishers who rely on just mass force of the brute force of clicks. It was all qualified, right? Like,
yeah.
That's rough for them because they're losing just that, all of that generalized juice. And we made a shift away from programmatic and more towards advertisers that are more geared into our industry, service, software as a service, that type of thing. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. Long way of saying, it's a massive time of change in the industry. And I'm wondering what you are thinking and seeing for like the future of, not just SEO, but marketing as a whole. What are your predictions, or what do you think, or what do you want to talk about?
You hit it on the head. SEO is contracting. There's no doubt about that. I see budgets being down, confidence being down from leadership. I'm not seeing people necessarily getting fired or laid off over this, but when people leave, I often see that the positions are not being refilled, right? So SEO is absolutely in a contraction. And, this like philosophical question of whether SEO dies or lives, it's like very philosophical. I would argue SEO has died many times, right? And it will probably die again. I see that we're using a lot of SEO basically also for AI visibility optimization. I do expect that to change, but I think however you flip it, we are in a transition period. And the problem with transition periods is that they're hard to navigate, you lose orientation, and it's painful, right? Once you settle at a new baseline, once you get comfortable, I just did a big move, right? And so for the last 8 weeks, we're like all very unsettled, and they, you just run around a little headless, and you kind of try to find your way, and then slowly things kind of start to settle back in. And so I'm very confident that whatever we're going to call this, we're going to settle into a new baseline. It might take a while, could take years, right? I think this is not going to stop in the next 6 months, probably not 12 months, but it's hard to predict when. But based on how quickly models improve and how quickly humans adapt to them, I think that will kind of decide the pace of this transition. But anyway, I think there's also a lot of opportunity in transitions. You can reinvent yourself. And I think that's where, as SEOs, we might lose the SEO budget, but maybe we gain some brand budget, which has been much bigger in the past. You see the companies spending millions of dollars for multi-year contracts for a tiny logo that sits somewhere on like a Formula One car. You know what I mean? Like, these things happen all the time. And so I think there's a big opportunity for SEO to detach from that unwanted profiling as a performance channel, right? Or maybe some people wanted that, I don't know. But detach ourselves from being a performance channel and much more to a brand channel, influence channel, presence channel, whatever you want to call it. But new metrics, new levers, deeply rooted in SEO, and effective and powerful, but kind of in a new design, right? Like SEO 2.0, whatever you want to call it. And I do agree with you. Like, I see, I also see people who've been in the game for a long time stepping out. Totally get that. I see young people losing a bit of confidence, whether that's the right choice. Totally get that. But I will also say that I would lie if I wouldn't admit that there's a little part of me that's kind of excited for all this change, because it's an opportunity to kind of reshuffle the cards, find out new stuff, maybe find some secrets, and kind of reverse engineer what's going on. And when you look at the last just 10 days, where multiple people and companies found new ways to reverse engineer what queries Gemini uses and ChatGPT uses, I'm like, man, it's awesome to see how adamant the industry works on like developing the new playbook, dissecting kind of how these mechanics work and LLMs work, and finding new ways. So I have high confidence, and I also have a lot of empathy for all the pain and kind of the problems that this industry is going through. But again, I see us coming out at the other side at some point in like a new design and a lot of impact.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I agree with the empathy as well, because, I think everyone in marketing, it seems, has lost their mind a little bit over the past year or two with these shifts in traffic. But that wild west environment is also really exciting, because there's going to be all of these developments, and if people are calm and they persevere and they do the work to figure these things out, either for themselves or to watch what those researchers are finding, people will be okay, right? We always are. So
we always are. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but I think there's a really important point to make here that I didn't make. And that is, it's not just search that's changing.
Mhm.
SEO is at the forefront of AI, at the absolute forefront, because it's about words and it's about search. And search is kind of the biggest interface between AI and humans right now. And so it's not just search that's changing, marketing is completely changing, and like all of our lives are completely changing. And sure, like this will take years to trickle through, maybe not even to the degree that we're thought of it, but I think it's pretty clear that AI is at least as revolutionary as the internet, maybe even the most revolutionary invention that humanity has made so far. And so let's not forget that like everything is changing, right? It's not just us SEOs, it's it's all the channels, it's marketing as a whole. You know, modes and levers are disappearing and new ones are coming up. So we're feeling it deeply in SEO as kind of being at the front line of AI, but make no mistake, this will trickle through to all the paid channels, product, like everything. Everybody is in kind of the shock state right now and trying to figure out what the new branches are to hold on to and then build on top of. But like marketing as we know it is over. Like all of that stuff is falling apart right now as LLMs can do so many new and crazy things and kind of finding so many more ways into our lives.
True that. I will say we have a small team at Search Engine Journal, which is great in terms of being nimble. And we've pretty much, we've collapsed editorial and marketing nearly at this point. So in terms of, I work really closely with Heather, VP of Marketing here, and we love it. Like it's made our team so tight, and we've had to just really shift and pivot how we do things. It used to be like SEO and editorial was over here and marketing was like over there, and like who knew what either team was doing, and sort of like who cared, and it was fine and it functioned. And those days are, I think, thankfully over. It's really brought our team closer together, and we're much more integrated because but you have to be. That's just this shift that the industry has put upon us. And it used to be like SEO and marketing. I know that SEO technically is a subset of marketing, but it has never made that more clear that marketing is this umbrella and SEO is this like little subset of it. Whereas before it was like SEO and marketing were sort of like these equal sized Venn diagrams that lived like separate from each other. And now there's like this, oh, this is marketing, and like here's SEO like as this little circle in the diagram. So that's been, I think, a healthy shift, especially for brands who are looking to convert, to have it all really under one roof, and so that the teams are working together, and so that it's more of a seamless experience between what editorial is, for content marketers or SEOs, what they're shouting out into the ether, to have that really more honed in on the ICP and the demographics, and really looking at conversion optimization and all those aspects of marketing that should be more integrated all along, that now people, I think, are forced to integrate. So it's not all bad. It makes people much more effective at their work, and it's better for the customers too.
100%. Yes. I have this conversation with all of my clients right now. Like, how do we change the teams? How do we bring them closer together, tear down these silos? I mean, look, realistically, and ideally, SEO and paid search have always been connected at the hip. But I'll tell you, at least across like almost all of the companies that I've worked with or at, they were siloed, right? And so the same exists with all these other teams like product marketing or social media, I said conversion and email, all that kind of stuff. And they should, like, I think now is the time to start thinking about how do we rip off the Band-Aid and bring these teams together, right? I think there can be small teams of maybe an SEO, an editor, an email person, social person, and maybe like a very technical person that can quickly prototype new apps and programs or tools. Like those teams can be incredibly dangerous. The biggest pain point that I'm seeing for organizations right now is that they're too bureaucratic. There's too much red tape and too many walls between the teams that don't allow them to run fast enough, right? AI essentially is a catalyst for speed. It allows you to speed things up critically. And so now it's more the workflows and the ways of working of companies that hold them back from running faster. And so, I mean, look, like realistically, you can't just like tear everything down and burn it down. And that, sure, there has to be some kind of thought behind this, right? But that's a big, big benefit of small companies that are not that kind of established yet, that don't have these settled walls yet. They can build these teams much, much faster, and they can experiment with what kind of skills are missing on these teams. And so really pushing my clients right now to go out, build new teams, try new teams, multi-disciplinary, not with like, oh yeah, we have these isolated teams and we kind of try to have them work together. No, one manager, one roof, one mission, and go. And those are kind of the teams that are having the biggest impact right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I want to touch on probably one more point before we wrap up, but that's the idea of other platforms. I think for such a long time, everyone had too many of their eggs in the Google basket, right? And if anyone's learned anything over the years, it's that you need to diversify where you get traffic from. And that's been the whole point of, there's Google, but then there's also ads, there's social media, there's newsletters, right? So there's lots of places where people can pull from to get traffic. And so to make that a really holistic, that's been our focus, is the idea of holistic marketing, and to have those teams work together to create that entire, call it a funnel or a flywheel or whatever, just that that engine that is bringing people to you. What are some things that you're seeing that are really working for people, whether it's what platform, whether it's Reddit or YouTube? And I know this depends on the company and it's going to depend on the demographics and there's all those dependencies, but I think generally speaking, where do people live these days? Where are humans hanging out and where do we find them? Like what's the success metrics that you're seeing?
The short answer is everywhere. Good
luck, everyone. Okay, good night.
Yeah, right. That's the show.
Yeah.
No, but the reality is everywhere. There's this interesting paradox, and I need to coin this term somehow, but this interesting paradox that basically all the social networks are growing and new ones are popping up, right? TikTok, I mean, it's not that new anymore, right? But it's kind of still growing. Reddit is becoming much more of a household now. And so you ask yourself, like, what gives? Like, sure, linear TV is down, okay, but like, how is this possible? And the reality is that people are online all the time, speaking for a friend, and they use a lot of platforms at the same time, right? And so the best teams or the companies that are making a big impact, they have this surround sound effect that they're creating, where they're present in a lot of places. They engage authentically, say on Reddit, right? Maybe like it doesn't, like when good companies engage on Reddit, it doesn't feel like marketing. It's not marketing really. It's much more like trying to be helpful. It's much more like customer support or success. And that's why these people are generally very well suited to interact on Reddit, but they like truly add value. They truly are part of the conversation. Brands are repurposing their content in a very thoughtful and high fidelity way, where maybe they create a blog article, it turns to a video, it turns to clips, which then turns to questions that they ask on or answer on Reddit, right? So there is this kind of everywhere. AI really helps with that. And I will also say it's typically not companies that are getting stuck at the kind of quantification of impact question, right? So the reality is that steering an organization or a company towards that multi-channel effect or that surround sound effect takes a swing, right? It takes a leader to say, okay, we're going to spend some money and we're going to take 6 months and we're going to invest in Reddit and YouTube. We're going to wait for the results to come in. We're not going to sit there every day and refreshing the dashboard. Like, how many sales have we generated yet? It takes a bit of a swing. And so I think it's defining for this era, for this transition period, where it's much harder to project and forecast where you're going to land with some of these things. And it takes judgment and taste and a certain degree of risk taking to invest in these channels and functions, and being comfortable, or at least okay, with waiting for some of the results to come in and being able to measure them later, right? I'm not saying you should wait a year or two, right? But like, give it 2 quarters or maybe 3 quarters and kind of experiment with some of these channels. So that's where people are. People are everywhere. It's not enough to just have like one shot in one platform. It needs to be kind of everywhere. And repurposing can help. Using AI with some of these things help. But at the end of the day, you need to take a swing.
Very wise, Kevin. Yeah, and one of the things that we'll leave it in a minute, but it's like one of those things that I found, for lack of a better way to put it, highly annoying, is that you can run these experiments and you're gonna wait for your results, and then before your experiment is even done, everything's changed again.
Yeah.
Yeah. For that.
Yes, exactly. You're absolutely right, and that is part of the problem here, right? Like the comfortable ways, the predictable ways are going away. And so you're taking a couple of swings at bats, right? We're talking baseball. And some of these might not work out, right? Because things change, or because we made a mistake, or because something else, right? But that's what you need to get comfortable with, right? And so the best leaders, the best teams, they're at bat a lot of times. They take a lot of swings because some of these swings will hit full force. And it's kind of a skill to build. So anyway, you get the point. But that's what I'm seeing for the best.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the things we've implemented at Search Engine Journal is the idea of experiment. And so every month, every department comes up with an experiment, and we just keep cranking them out. And so we just are constantly shifting what we do, and it could be with a website layout, it could be with the type of content, it could, it really runs the gamut, what we're experimenting with. And so I think if people can just be nimble and I always like to say soft knees, like in baseball when you're like waiting, like just soft knees, be prepared, like be nimble, be ready to move and shift in how we do things. I think people will be okay with, there's no like set it and forget it lifestyle anymore. It's like people just have to keep their wits about them. And yeah, that's about it.
Yes, on point, right? Allow people to fail. I think another kind of good skill is if you're able to take a meaningful risk. And I'm not saying bet the farm, but when you as a leader want to encourage your people to take risks, let them take some actual risks, and not just, oh yeah, well, this small experiment that has no consequences didn't work out. Haha. No. Like, you need to get comfortable taking risks. And again, this does not mean to blindly just shoot in all directions. Like, you want to have some thought behind that, some judgment. You want to be critical, but then it has to be a time at which you let go, when you just let it do its thing.
That is a really perfect point, because our experiments, to focus them, we look at North Star metrics. And so we've chosen this year, North Star metric is, one of them is newsletter subscribers. And so a lot of our experiments revolve around that metric.
Mm-hmm.
How can we get more signups? And we've had some awesome success with that. So just want to leave that on an encouraging note for people that it can work out, right? It can work out. We've had bizarrely, some of our strongest quarters, not in terms of raw traffic, but in terms of conversions and sales and sponsorships. So it's not all doom and gloom out there. So everybody just hang in, keep going, right?
Amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. All right, Kevin. Well, any parting remarks before we head out?
Yeah. I think I just want to build on what we spoke about before. Now is the time again to like change some things up. I also want to say, like, I'm hearing a lot of very concerned SEOs, concerned about how do I tell this story, and like how do I manage, quote unquote, my boss or leadership in this time where traffic is down and stuff. And I want to say, like, I want to send some courage out. Like, this is like one of the biggest shift that I lived through in my life. I would bet it's probably for most, if not all, of the listeners and the audience. And so this is maybe the time to kind of like make some changes and have some, grace about finding a new playbook. I'm seeing a lot of SEOs like very scared about this. And I think, sure, like I get the initial fear, but again, like this is such a substantial, fundamental change. Like, it's okay for things to look different, and okay for you to not have to answer right now. Like, and I would encourage you to push back on leadership and say, look, nobody knows the answer right now. We can experiment, we can learn together, but don't expect me to quote unquote turn traffic around, but all of this is crumbling.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really important for people to focus on new metrics that aren't just, UVs or PVs. It's really people need to pick new metrics. That's, and things that are going to tell a better success story and that are going to be more inherent to the company's bottom line and goals.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And what's your URL? What do you want to promote?
Yeah, growth-memo.com, or just search for Growth Memo. That's my baby. That's really where I put in all my brain juices. So that's the only one.
Awesome. And we're at searchenginejournal.com, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Kevin. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me.